I remember the exact temperature of Richard Callaway Sr.'s hand when I shook it. Cold, firm, dismissive. His wife, Diane, offered me her fingers the way you'd offer a stranger directions, politely, but without any real investment in where you ended up. They smiled at me the way people smile at a painting they don't understand but don't want to seem rude about. Decorative, forgettable. My name is Savannah Mercer. I was 26 years old the evening of my engagement party at the Callaway family estate in Scottsdale, Arizona. The house had vaulted ceilings and an outdoor kitchen and one of those pools that looks like it pours right into the desert horizon. I grew up in a two-bedroom apartment in Tulsa, Oklahoma, where my mother, Rosetta Mercer, worked double shifts as a hospital aide and still somehow found time to braid my hair before school every single morning. We weren't wealthy. We were something better. We were intentional. But the Callaways didn't know that yet. What they knew was that their son, Brandon, handsome, sharp-jawed, kind-eyed Brandon, had brought home a woman with no family money, no notable last name, and no social pedigree worth mentioning at their country club. I heard Richard tell his son in the study, thinking the French doors muffled more than they did. "She has nothing to bring to this family." I was standing 6 feet away, holding a glass of sparkling water with a lemon wedge, wearing the nicest dress I owned. Brandon said nothing. "I want to be honest with you." That silence cracked something small inside me. Not something big enough to walk away, but something. The kind of quiet that asks you, "Do you really see me?" I tucked it away. I walked back into the room, smiled at Diane's sister's joke, and shook Richard's hand when the evening ended. Cold, firm, dismissive. We got married 7 months later in a small ceremony in Sedona. My mother cried the entire time. Brandon's parents sat straight-backed in the front row and applauded when appropriate. I didn't need their tears, but I noticed their distance. What the Callaways never bothered to learn about me, because they'd already written their conclusion before reading a single page, was what I had spent the previous 4 years building, quietly, methodically, in the hours before sunrise and after midnight, while also working full-time as a logistics coordinator and taking my mother to her Thursday dialysis appointments. I had been building something that had a name, a structure, a legal filing, and a growing balance sheet. They just didn't know it yet. I wasn't offended by their judgment. I understood it even. People like the Callaways had been taught that value announces itself through zip codes and last names and the right college on a resume. They'd never been forced to build anything from nothing, so they didn't recognize what that process looked like while it was still happening. They mistook my quietness for emptiness. That was their first mistake. I spent the first year of my marriage the same way I'd spent the years before it. Working. Brandon knew pieces of what I was doing. He believed in me in the abstract the way good people sometimes do. Loving you genuinely, but not yet understanding the full geography of who you are. I didn't pressure him to confront his parents. That wasn't my battle to hand him. It was mine to finish first. And in the second year of our marriage, on a Tuesday morning in March, I finished it. I opened my laptop, pulled up a single document, and forwarded it to my husband with 4 words in the subject line. "Show your parents this." I need to back up, because the document didn't come from nowhere. It came from a Tuesday night in 2019 when I sat at my kitchen table in our apartment in Phoenix and wrote the name of my company on a legal pad in black ink. Mercer Supply Partners, LLC. I circled it twice. I'd spent 3 years inside the logistics industry watching inefficiencies that nobody seemed motivated to fix. Smaller businesses, restaurants, medical clinics, school districts were consistently getting squeezed by large distributors who deprioritized their orders. The margins were brutal and the service was worse. I had relationships, I had knowledge, and most critically, I had a plan that I'd been quietly developing in spreadsheets I kept password-protected on a hard drive I stored in my nightstand. I filed the LLC paperwork myself. I took a $9,000 personal loan using the small amount of savings I'd kept since college. My mother told me to bet on myself. I did. The first 18 months were survival mode. I won 3 small contracts: a regional restaurant group in Mesa, a pediatric clinic network in Tempe, and a charter school district outside Flagstaff. I drove to meetings in a car with a check engine light I couldn't afford to address. I negotiated terms on my lunch breaks, eating a packed sandwich with one hand and reviewing invoices with the other. I hired my first part-time employee, a college student named Deja, out of my own pocket before I was truly comfortable doing so, because I believed growth required investment before comfort. By the end of year 1, Mercer Supply Partners had generated just over $310,000 in revenue. I told almost no one, not because I was hiding it, but because I had grown up understanding something essential. You don't announce the harvest before you've secured the field. My mother taught me that. She also taught me that real credibility isn't declared, it's demonstrated. I wanted to demonstrate it so completely, so undeniably, that there would be no room left for doubt. By the middle of year 2, I had 11 contracts, 2 full-time employees, and a partnership agreement with a regional distribution hub that tripled my operational capacity. A woman named Gloria Trann, who ran a small business investment group out of Tempe, had approached me after a Chamber of Commerce luncheon and offered to connect me with 2 institutional clients. I remember sitting in her office, listening to her say, "Savannah, do you understand what you've built here?" I nodded, but I was still thinking about cold hands and French doors. What I had built by March of our second year of marriage was a company with $1.2 million in annual revenue, a clean balance sheet, 4 employees, and a pending contract with a regional hospital group that, if finalized, would push year 3 projections past the $2 million threshold. I compiled everything into a single PDF. Revenue reports, contract summaries, business registration documents, the pending hospital agreement, a 1-page executive summary on company letterhead, Mercer Supply Partners, LLC, with my name printed cleanly at the top. I had never shown Brandon the full picture. He knew I was working on the business. He knew it was growing. But I had protected him from the details the same way I'd protected myself from his family's opinions, carefully and with long-term purpose. That Tuesday morning, I forwarded him the document. He called me 20 minutes later. His voice was different, fuller, I think, like something had expanded inside him. "Savannah," he said, I didn't know the full—" He stopped, started again. "I'm so proud of you. Can I show my parents?" "That's why I sent it," I said. He went quiet for a moment. I heard him exhale. "Okay," he said softly. His father called him that same evening. Brandon told me what his father said while we were washing dishes together. He put down the pan he was drying, turned toward me, and his eyes were wet before he even opened his mouth. Brandon Callaway was not a man who cried easily. He'd grown up in a household where emotional expression was considered a structural weakness, like a load-bearing wall with a crack in it. Watching him stand in our kitchen in a faded Suns t-shirt with tears running down his face quietly rearranged something in both of us. "My dad called me," he said. He read the title of the document. He paused. He said, "I was wrong, son." 4 words. I was wrong, son. I dried my hands on the dish towel. I didn't cry. I didn't feel triumphant exactly. It was something more complicated than triumph. It was the particular exhaustion of a person who has been running a very long race and has finally crossed a finish line they were never supposed to reach. Richard Callaway Sr. called me 2 days later. He was formal about it, measured, like a man who had rehearsed the words but not yet made peace with needing to say them. He told me he owed me an apology. He said he had judged me without information and that he recognized that was unfair. He said he respected what I had built. I thanked him. I meant it. Because the lesson I carry from all of this isn't about proving people wrong. It's about what happens when someone is genuinely willing to be corrected. That matters. That costs something. Diane sent me a card, handwritten. She said she hoped I'd be patient with them as they learned who I truly was. I keep it in the same drawer as my first LLC paperwork. Mercer Supply Partners crossed $2 million in revenue the following year. We now have 12 employees, and I'm currently in conversations about a regional expansion that would open a second operational hub in Albuquerque. Gloria Trann sits on my advisory board. Deja, who started as my part-time college hire, is now my operations manager. My mother, Rosetta Mercer, came to visit us in Phoenix last spring. We took her to dinner at a restaurant on the water, and she wore the blue dress she'd been saving for a special occasion. At one point, she leaned across the table and said to me quietly, "You didn't need them to believe in you first." I squeezed her hand. No, I didn't. But I also want to be honest about Brandon. His silence at that engagement party hurt me. I told him so, eventually. Not in accusation, but in truth. The way you tell someone you love something difficult because the relationship deserves honesty. He listened. He said he was sorry. He said he had been afraid of conflict with his parents and that he'd let that fear cost me something. That conversation changed our marriage, made it stronger, actually, because it was the first time we built something together out of discomfort instead of avoiding it. Love is not passive. Neither is marriage. Neither, for that matter, is self-worth. A note before you go. What this story taught me, what I hope it offers you, is simple but not easy. Your value does not require anyone's recognition to be real. Build anyway. Document your progress not for the approval of others, but because a record of your growth is one of the most honest things you can own. And when someone finally looks at what you've built and says I was wrong, receive it with grace. Bitterness would have made me smaller. Grace made me larger. The cold handshake at the beginning of this story was never really about me. It was about the limits of what Richard and Diane Callaway had been taught to see. I just kept building until the limits ran out. Savannah Mercer, Phoenix, Arizona.